All right, so I'm here with
Blue Dunsworth.
So I got Blue, as you can see behind me. He has a lot of great work.
Painting. Yeah, a lot of, right now, honestly, mixed media.
Mixed media, yep.
Mixed a lot of oil, a lot of craft supplies. Roblox guy.
A little Roblox. Yeah. So, most important question, what's your favorite color?
What's my favorite color? Damn. Right now, I have to say it's this like pale green, kind of almost like a viridian paired with purple.
So you say like what you wearing right now? That's
yeah, like what I'm wearing right now. Well, this is more of a lavender kind of.
How do you choose your subject matter?
Well, I have to say that over time, it's very much changed. Or I would go to film, comic. I would look more externally for inspiration and be like, oh, how can I remix this? How can I borrow this? Whereas now I take a much more personal approach. I kind of view my work as almost like a documentation of my life. So what was the question again? Okay.
So this goes perfectly.
Yeah.
You're basically saying it's going through some of these life experiences that you've gone through.
Yeah. So I like to think about moments that I'll be in. A lot of times I'll be like, damn, that was a moment. Let me take some, y'all hold still. Let me take some pictures.
Yeah.
Like I need to remember this shit. And a lot of times I do come back to them. Like this piece, for example, I don't know if you can see it on there, but it's calling back to a particular moment. So I really just resource my life, people in it, and whatever media I'm consuming.
Are there any other artists that have influenced your work?
So I would say early Ringling, I was really into chrome.
Yeah.
I was digging my teeth in the rave scene. I was starting to go to festivals, starting to party. And so I really love the illustrations by Hajime Sorayama. Okay. Have you seen he does like the robot girl?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated the chrome. But I don't know, to be honest, I don't pull a lot from visual artists, actually. I really try to use music and the emotions I take from music and kind of interpolate that and think like, well, how can I visualize this sound?
Yeah.
Movies too, like honestly, just a little bit of everything. Like I'm just like open-eyed everywhere I go, thinking where. And that is a tricky thing because you have to deal with trying to show the work and then something else that's kind of swaying. It could sway the interpretation. I don't know. I really like to kind of make a particular strange, eerie atmosphere. Yeah. And it obviously depends on what I'm going for. Like I like to get in some freaky music, man.
Yeah.
I like to get kind of lost.
Yeah, and I feel like it resonates. I mean, especially with some of your most like surrealistic paintings.
Yeah, I think that like I went down a like eerie Berlin techno phase for a bit, and I think that definitely impacted.
Yeah, the influence is there. Now, what's your favorite piece of art that you've created?
I would actually say that when I finish a work, kind of like kills me inside a little bit.
Yeah,
and I kind of detach from it, where I'm like, damn, like
the flaws.
Yeah, because when you're caught up in making a work, the beauty of it is you're not thinking about it. It's kind of you're in a state of flow where it's like once you're separated from that, it's much easier to see the issues with it. But coming back to that question, I would have to say it's actually this piece over here that's my favorite because it's usually what I'm working on at the time, the most relevant and up to date to my ideas. But give me a week, I won't like this anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I struggle with being very critical of my own work too. Yeah. Whereas like I've had thoughts of destroying certain pieces and cutting things up, and I was just like,
that's the struggle that I was talking about and I think it was my first vlog. I don't know if I posted this part of it. I was talking about how just the difficultness of it where it comes to like posting it, Yeah. And a lot of that comes from that same feeling that you're talking about, where like you don't enjoy the look of it.
Yeah.
And it's like it's done.
Yeah. You just gotta push through. It's hard to not judge your work.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Art is very, I don't know, I think we view art a lot like people. Sometimes it's hard not to judge people. I don't know.
Yeah, but I see.
And I think we do have his description. Can we take that? Let's take his description. Okay. This is the guy they wanted people in Pennsylvania to be out on the lookout for. He's got a nose and some hair that goes like.
I'm not saying I'm judgmental, but I think that we're all a little more judgmental than we think we
I think
are.
Subconsciously.
Yeah.
I think subconsciously it's just bound to happen.
Yeah.
All right. So which one would you like to dive into? One of your first work.
I think the start would be this big piece, Dopamine Highway. Just to give you some perspective, this was sophomore year. Basically, I was like kind of fucking depressed.
Yeah.
I was going through it. I had bad habits. You know, I was addicted to scrolling on TikTok.
Yeah.
I was eating like shit. I was having a lot of fucking caffeine, way too much pre-workout. Also dealing with just the way my head works. You know, I don't know if it's ADHD or what, but this feeling of being so exhausted, but so ambitious, but so worn out and just fried. I was so sick of making work I wasn't pleased with, so sick of making small work. And I was like, I'm making something big and I'm capturing this emotion, whatever this emotion is.
I remember at the time when you were still working on it, you were like about to finish it, you were showing me some of it, and I was like, man, you have something there.
Yeah.
Talk about a little bit about the experience of like knowing, fuck, I have something here.
So it was kind of crazy. It was kind of crazy because I remember like Christmas break. Like I stayed for a good portion of Christmas break to work on this because I just needed to do. I was so sick of being at Ringling and not feeling like I'd done anything. And I was like, I need to make something. And I really do like the immersion and the intenseness of where it feels like everything is coming in at you at once. And that was really, you know, there's all the specific little details and nuances.
I was telling you that it's a very like cinematic piece.
Yeah.
You know, like I could picture this right
it's dramatic.
from the movie.
It's dramatic
it's very
because
dramatic.
we're very dramatic to ourselves in our own head. You know, we're kind of just doing that to ourselves. So if I was to describe what this is, I would say it's taking a mind, taking the sensory organs, the ways that we experience the world, the taste, the sight, the touch, the smell, and just building a factory around it that is just feeding all of those things. Because in a way, I don't know, I felt like I had a cause with this piece in a way.
I think one of the most fun parts, but also sad parts, especially when you understand it, you get really excited about something, about a piece, and you're working on it, and it feels huge.
Yeah.
And then you finish, and then it's all put together, and even if you like it or not like it, it stays there. It's in that.
And that moment's captured too.
Yeah.
But I think in making the piece, you also work through those emotions in a way. You know, like after making this, I didn't have any motivation to make things with that idea anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was just so dense.
Yeah.
So dense, and it took me so long. Well, for one, there's this little flower. I always throw little flowers in pieces.
Yeah.
For my dad, kind of calling back to my dad. So sometimes you'll see little hidden flowers. Another thing is that portion up there, just behind that screen, comes from a drawing I did when I was like, I don't know, middle of high school.
Yeah.
Right when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I just recycled it, which I think is pretty cool. It made me. It was like, oh, my younger self.
Yeah.
Cool, you're contributing.
That's cool. And I mean, I'm sure you could tell your younger self, hey, I was, but it, like, if you could, and I think about this all the time, like, if I were to tell myself 2-3 years ago, like, this, or show him, like, what I'm making, I'm sure he would be so much more excited.
Bro.
You know?
Yes, and motivated. Like, damn, that's where I'm going. Shit.
I flike I would get right into it because I would feel like, man, what if?
Yeah, because I remember like being like, what the fuck am I gonna draw?
Yeah.
Like, actually working on a video piece of this right now where I'm going into Photoshop, cutting up the elements, producing, sampling, making sound to it. So just imagine this, but like the conveyor belt running, the flames jutting,
cool,
the screens flickering and playing things, the
see
mouth
right
chomping. Definitely
very metallic,
industrial, and that's kind of what I'm going for. So don't know when that'll come out, but
Dopamine
Highway, y'all. It's 5 by 6 feet. Moving on from this piece, so this was for context, I'm in my junior year right now. This was mid-sophomore year. Anyway, you can kind of see how the imagery leads us here to Overflow. So here I was like still a little stuck up on what I'd done here. I really resonated with it, but I was like, what if I put that in a different light? You know, what if instead of a factory being built around me, what if I'm the machine? What if I'm the dysfunctional robot?
It's inside you.
It's inside me rather than it's outside of me. So here, the idea is that I'm so built up, bottled up, full of emotion, so exhausted, and just like, think of a factory that's on fire. It's not functioning. It's breaking down. The conveyor belts are fucking up. So this was kind of like capturing moments that I've experienced, capturing that feeling of like, I'm at that breaking point. Everything is coming out. Everything is just like, I can't hold it in anymore. And it's so much so that, you know, there's a lightning storm. There's the world is kind of shifting along with the individual. And
could you dive into some of those feelings that you're trying to represent here?
Yeah. So I'll just I'll break down like kind of what's here visually, and I think that'll trail us into that. So you can see that there's some sand castles, and that was kind of like, okay, kids make sand castles.
Yeah.
Childhood. Okay. And then that leads us. You see some footprints trailing off into the water, but continuing onto the mirror, reflecting the rocking chair.
Yep.
And so footprints trailing off into the water, disappearing. Okay, I'm kind of getting that vibe. So the flower pot and the skull, that reflection, what's going on there is basically me reframing my view, reflecting on my loss with, just for some context, I lost my dad when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And it's been something that up until now I've really struggled with, and had a lot of moments like this where, I didn't feel human. I didn't feel functional.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like a part of society. And so this piece was me seeing myself in those moments and telling myself, maybe there's another reality here.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a door that looks like this same skull being struck by lightning, this negative thing. Maybe there's a polar end to that
Yeah.
is positive, and that's where the flower's at. Thinking about the flower there too.
Think about the flower.
The flower pot, and the sun's coming up too.
Yep, I was just about to mention that. That's something I didn't even see before. And now that you put it all into perspective, I feel like I can understand this piece fully. I mean, the whole thing makes sense to me now,
Yeah.
And I think that's the greatest thing about explaining the type of work that you do
Mhm.
is just to get the context of your mind, what you're
Absolutely,
thinking of
absolutely.
while you're making it.
Yeah, it's a lot of times it's pretty difficult for me to know what people get. You know what I mean? It is fun to play with that accessibility of how much you're actually putting out there.
Yeah, because I'm sure like, somebody could have seen this and thought of a completely different thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
From the way I see it, that narrative I just told you, that's my story. That's how I see this. But this is an object, Whatever you feel is right. I don't like to tell that story too often because I don't want people to be like, oh, this is it. It's like, no, that's not it. Like, that's kind of what motivated it.
Yeah, because, it could help somebody else if they view it in their world.
Exactly.
How they want to view it.
Not them putting themselves in my shoes. It's like you're in your own shoes, seeing what I made. How
Yeah.
does that make you feel? But yeah, I would say that piece transitions us into this rave painting.
The rave painting.
The rave painting, yeah.
Definitely one of the most like exciting, and like there's a lot going on.
A lot going on.
And
A little too much going on.
it definitely, from what you've explained to me, which you're about to go into, but it makes a lot of sense when you talk about it, you discuss it, So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun seeing these pieces here because it's like I can kind of piece together a timeline.
Yeah.
Walking through them like this, but this moves into me kind of like, I don't know, I just started to party a lot. I
Yeah.
started to go to raves. I started to mess around with compounds.
Now, why dive a little bit into why you think you went into that?
I really didn't like high school.
Okay.
Like I was kind of like, I wasn't like popular. I wasn't like not popular. I was like the art kid, to be honest with you.
Like all of us.
Yeah. And like my small little friend group, we were kind of on the outskirts and not really a part of things. We still went to the parties and all, but we were very, very close-knit, very brought together by our music taste. And, we felt very different with what we listened to and just like how we were. We didn't resonate with a lot of the people at our school. And so started to fuck around and get into electronic music.
Yeah.
And I started going to festivals and I kind of made a new group of friends that love to do that too. And so we started to get really into it, and it was a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but we were like, we're gonna do this for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So like this is it. Like I wanted to make something that captured, I'm very into capturing moments, obviously capturing emotions. And personally, I've had a lot of moments at clubs, parties, things where I get overwhelmed, I get overstimulated. Everything's great, but I kind of mentally check out. And I'm just like, oh, boom, what's going on over here? Oh, boom, what's going on over here? I'm just kind of like flashing around, looking at things. And so this piece, I wanted to be very chaotic, very overwhelming, but also full of little pockets of narrative,
It's like you were talking about, like the way that these moments are just flashing.
Yeah. And they're not all good. They're not all bad. You think about, this is a callback to, I think it's Gustav Klimt piece, The Kiss, which is like, historically that piece, it's like they don't know, was she being taken advantage of? Was it love? Was it this? Was it that? Is this guy in the club? Is she drunk? Is she too drunk?
And that actually goes right into that, because if you look at it from like a club scene, do you know what's going on?
Yeah, a lot of times people, there's fucked up shit going on, and it takes that moment of like, oh, like I'm actually like looking around. I'm not just like, I'm like looking around and I'm seeing what's going on. And I actually think that I've had some people say that this portion looks like Edward Hopper, the Nighthawks painting? It's like
No.
it's like a diner at night. And
Yeah.
There's just people sitting there.
Oh, I know exactly what
You
you're
know what
talking
I'm
about.
Yeah. Doesn't that remind you of that a little
it does.
bit?
That's actually one of my favorite parts of it because it's so it feels background, but it's so potent because of that green.
Yeah, this piece was a lot of fun. I'm not even going to raves that much anymore
Yeah.
anyway, but I do think it was a fun piece, and it's a good visual for being distracted,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, we've all gone through that you know.
Oh,
phase
yeah.
where we're just
Yeah.
like have fun. You know, I mean, we're still 20, so we
Yeah.
totally understand.
Facts, bro. Facts. Okay, so that and the other piece that we don't have here takes us to, I worked on those two over the summer.
Okay.
It was basically me finishing out my sophomore ideas. I was like, okay, let me just work over the summer, get this shit done. Coming into junior year,
Yep.
I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I know that I'm not enjoying what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Like, I love the result, but the actual act of painting them,
Mhm.
I wasn't happy
What
with.
do you think that is?
I think I was just very tight with my brushwork.
Like
I was
stiff. Like,
stiff,
yeah.
restricted. I was too focused on making things realistic because I equated that with betterness.
Mhm.
You know, I perceived
Man,
the word.
I have that issue too all the
Yeah.
time where I feel like I have to produce and especially when it comes to uploading stuff. I mean, there's
Oh.
so much stuff that I never upload. And it's because I have this feeling of it. It's like, is it realistic enough?
Yeah.
And it's like, is it good? Is it good? Is it
Yeah.
good? I'm like, man, it's not like that because I look at a bunch of different artists and
it's
that's not.
it's not realistic.
Yeah, it's not. It's not always
it's
realistic.
such-
You know.
Yeah, and it is, realism's great, but at the end of the day, if you have if you have a class of people that can all draw realistically,
Yeah.
what's the point?
And I think it's good.
It's impressive. It's great. Yeah.
but when it comes to evolving as an artist yourself, I feel like it's good to dive away from that a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. And I do think that being able to branch out of that comes from a better understanding of it too.
Of course,
You know?
I don't think you're able to
You
truly
shouldn't
understand.
skip the fundamentals.
Yeah,
you know?
you shouldn't skip it because you have to understand that to even begin working on.
Exactly.
different things.
Exactly. So it is definitely important. But so that kind of takes us up until where we're at now, where I come in and I'm like, I don't know what to make. So I'm going to just so basically with these,
Yeah.
I would do these preliminary drawings, and the drawings would be like 80% of what the final painting was going to be compositionally.
Yeah.
Which seems normal, but for me, it made the painting too planned out, where there wasn't that much exploration in the process.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
need that freedom of what's happening in this moment. You know, it's not like, I started out copying from a reference. I came up here, I just threw down some lines. I was like, that looks ugly, painted over it. Threw down some more lines. Damn, that looks ugly too. Painted over it. Threw down some more lines.
Trial and error.
Yep. And I was like, okay, I kind of like that line. That kind of looks like a bridge of sorts, maybe like a Minecraft dungeon or some shit. And as I started to fill in these shapes, I was like, okay, this is kind of like a building, kind of like a house,
Yep.
kind of a space. And at the time, for some emotional context, I was really revisiting, again, a lot of the stuff with my dad, but kind of in a different light, more through the lens of me as a very young child. And that's where a lot of the childlike imagery comes from. Think of that, kind of reminds me of a Monopoly board. I kind of think of one of those race car carpets that they'd have in preschools looking at this.
And I mean, just mentioning that, it makes a lot more sense for even the top part for the police, and then
Mhm.
the little Roblox guy right here,
Yeah.
looks like something straight out of a kid's head. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I practiced non-judgment with my work, whereas for this is experimental. I don't plan on putting this out, to be honest, but it was okay, I have to make something without expecting it to look good. And that's what I did. I came in here and I was like, these are the emotions I'm thinking about my dad.
Yeah.
These are the shows I was watching at the time. I was really into Batman and Joker comic books.
Yeah, I see the
around
Batman
the time that I
symbol.
lost him.
Dope.
Yeah. And so all of that just started, once I had a blank canvas, and I was thinking about those things, all the memories just started flooding in. And so that's where these little pockets of information come from. The police cars. I know you probably haven't looked that much into it, but there's this little thing. It's find the key. Where's the key? Here's the key. There's a door, a little hidden door over there. There's almost a whole little game going
I
on
see it. Yeah.
along the borders, but the police cars are the cop cars that came to my doorstep when my dad passed.
Yeah.
And they came and they knocked on the door. I remember seeing the lights outside the door, being a little fucking blonde ass kid
Yeah.
looking through the door and being why is my mom breaking down? So that's where the cop cars come up. They're flooding through, I really wanted this to be viewed from there's no set perspective, because thinking about this loss, thinking about these emotions, I can't have a set perspective on that. I can't have a negative outlook. I can choose which perspective I'm going to have. And
So it kind of goes back to the mirror, the flower pot, and the skull on the chair. It goes right back to
it
that.
goes right back to that. It does. And it's funny because I didn't even know that making. Like at first I had no idea what this was. And I think that way of working, is kind of what I was missing.
Yeah.
That ambiguousness, that spontaneous kind of just.
You think that kind of lets your subconscious take over and be like, maybe this is exactly what I want to do. I'm just not able to tell myself,
Yeah, it's all intuitive. So yeah, this is almost like a collection of memories, and I could keep going into detail of where the things come from, the robot, a lot of things. I could keep going on to that, but coming from that piece, that takes us into whatever's going on here. Just for some context, ladies and gentlemen. So this piece looked extremely different.
Yeah.
Extremely fucking different. I knew I wanted to keep that green because that was such a striking, I don't know, I just really resonated with that as a kid, that neon green. And what do we have? A sweater. This is a sweater that I've held on to since I was like 6 years old. My mom gave it to me. It was a very special sweater. As a kid, I was very attached to objects. I didn't grow up with a lot of money or a lot of things. So when I would get something, I would really hold on to it.
Yeah.
And so this kind of became an heirloom that has sat in my closet all this time. And coming into junior year, especially after making this, I started to go through kind of like, not an ego death, but like I realized how much I was identifying with things like raving, my clothes, like basically who I thought I was started to shatter a little bit. And I went through a breakup. I've been going through like a lot of life shit. I've lost some friends recently, lost a lot of people, and I've been kind of like realizing what's actually important to me, realizing I need to let go of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so I came to this piece and I was like still in that childish mode, but up to like almost teenager level, we'll say, in terms of my mindset of like what I wanted to make. So I came to this piece and I was like, this sweater is me in 2013, put it on here. This hand is reaching out. There was another hand there. It was my dad's hand. And I threw this on the canvas, threw down some black paint, some red paint, some angry colors. I put on some like heavy ass metal, some like screamo. Yeah. I started fucking it up, just going crazy, letting the rage out. I
could see like it's like cut up.
And and there was things stapled all over it. There was so much on here to where the canvas was like weighing down. I had these pencils stabbed in and glued in there. These are carpenter's pencils. My dad was a carpenter. Just another thing to connect with him in the piece. And so I did all of that, and I finished it off with writing, "Mom was right about Mortal Kombat."
Yeah.
Across the canvas, and I thought that was really funny. The context for that is my dad. I remember we had a Wii, and he would always like whenever my mom was gone, he'd be like, "Let's play some Mortal Kombat." Like she didn't want me to play because she thought it made me violent. Yeah. And I just thought it was ironic that I was being very violent, making a painting, and like thinking about just thinking about Mortal Kombat, just thinking about all these different things from when I was a kid at that time.
Yeah.
And then I came back a day later, and I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, nobody's seeing this. It looks like a teenager had a tantrum on this canvas. Like, and so I was like, but I had intended to change it.
Yeah.
I knew that wasn't its final stage. So I waited a few days. I kind of let it sit there, ruminate in my mind.
And I'm sure you kept looking at it, right?
Yeah.
Every day.
No, I did. I came in a few times, just sat with it, to be honest, and kind of let it speak to me. And then I came in and I delicately pulled all the spikes out. I took the staples out. I took the irrelevant shit out. I left what I felt was necessary and what I wanted to remember. And I went in with white paint and I started to clean it up and make it a little lighter, seal it, put those things underneath. And I'm also I haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna go back and where the rips are, sew it, hand sew it, seal it, complete it as an act of, letting go of a physical object that I associate with the time, not being attached to that object, making that object, me relive that memory, but just allowing myself to let go of it,
Yeah.
And I don't think visually it's the most appealing thing, but for me, it is a very important piece.
And it's not meant for that. Especially now that you've told me the story, that's not what this piece is meant for.
Not at all.
You know what I'm saying?
Not at all. Like this definitely led into this. But yeah. Whew. And I had like 2 other experimental pieces that were kind of just so all over the place.
Yeah.
They weren't even grounded in any way that I don't really plan on showing. But that leads us to current. These, just for some perspective, these were probably the last few months working on this kind of thing, last month. And now we're here where I'm taking that mentality of maybe I don't have to paint the whole thing. Maybe I can let it work for me. Maybe I don't need to be realistic. Maybe I don't need a reference. Maybe I can just come up with this shit. Maybe I'll have a little bit of reference. But what did I enjoy here? What didn't I enjoy here? What did I enjoy here? What didn't I enjoy here? And I wasn't able to pick out like specific things, but I knew I liked to work. I knew that my drawings needed to come to the painting. So I've kind of got like a return to my illustration-y roots. You know, I used to draw comic books growing up, and I think, you know, you too probably,
course,
like a lot of us grew up.
Everybody.
That's how we learn, you know, and I may be in fine arts right now. I don't really identify as like a fine artist, but, you know, letting those roots show through. And I think I'm going to start an investigation of thinking about, okay, I've covered some of this past. Now I'm starting to think about Florida. You know, how has Florida shaped me? And this is calling back to a moment coming back from a club where prior to going to that club, I'd wrestled with a lot of these emotions, and I just had a great time. A really great time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the person I was with was kind of taking me along this journey, leading me. I wasn't sure where they were leading me.
Oh, right, because it's the passenger seat. It's not the driver.
It's not the driver. You're being taken along in this moment. It's almost like sci-fi, high speed.
Yeah.
You know, I've spent a lot of time on the Florida highways, driving back and forth, and I don't know. There's just an atmosphere of that red glow of the stoplights, of the tail lights. And so this is, you know, that person taking me to a kitchen. And you're like, what do you mean a kitchen? But basically, you know, the kitchen is kind of like the epitome of Florida for me in a way. At least that kitchen, it's this, just think about like a shitty apartment
structure
kitchen.
of it.
The structure of it. It's this thing that everybody that's kind of like lived in cheap government housing, like you just have like this shitty little kitchen. And so I felt like that moment was leading me into thinking about Florida. And now I'm starting to do some other work, thinking about how that shaped me. Yeah. About to do some interviews and do a time-based piece about people that grew up in the 321, the Brevard area. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Awesome. It makes a lot more sense. It definitely has more of an appreciation to it, especially because, I mean, I've seen your work, and creative-wise, looks wild. And it's interesting to hear some of the background because, especially for your type of style of art, you know, it gives more context to how you were thinking as an artist, you know, what you were going through in that moment and trying to speak on it. And I feel like that's something that, at least for other majors, like art wise, when it comes to like drawing and painting and that type of stuff, I feel like we don't get to do that as much. Yeah. And that's something that I look forward to in like fine arts piece.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, fine arts is great because I can paint, I can do pretty much anything I want to do. And just honestly, the most important thing is that it's authentic to me, which is dope. But at the same time, I'm recently coming to the idea that I really, you know, I'm at Ringling right now. I'm doing fine arts right now. This is the opportunity that opened itself up to me post high school, but I'm also starting to think maybe that's not the route I'm gonna stick to. You know, I think post Ringling, I'm gonna fuck around, try to be a DJ. I'm messing around making some experimental music right now.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, making some video pieces. So we'll see where things go.
Just expand, right?
Just expand, bro. Like I want to be a part of popular culture. I want to be a part of music. I want to be a part of these different things that, you know, fine arts, just high art in general secludes itself. And I don't really stand for a lot that goes on within that system.
Okay.
Not to say that any system's perfect, but, you know,
you want to branch out.
I want to branch out.
No, and I agree. And that's why I'm also doing this stuff too, because I want to expand, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the reasons why I wanted to do the interviews, because I feel like a lot of people have something to say.
Yeah.
But they just need somebody to like,
somebody to ask them.
Yeah, somebody to ask them. You know, that's really what it is. And I feel like everybody would love that, you know, to have the chance to speak on.
Yeah.
You know?
We can learn so much from each other too.
No, exactly. Yeah. Like and this is why I want to dive into like film majors and virtual reality and like all the different majors.
Such a good resource of people here.
I know, and we're not able to see all of it. So hopefully, you know, as this goes on, hopefully we get to see that. You know?
Yeah. No, we will.
Sorry, let's go back to some of the questions. Do you have any rituals or routines that help you get into this creative mindset?
Well, we were kind of touching on before, but whenever I'm kind of like lacking ideas, lacking inspiration, I think boredom is always a good go-to. You know, like just sit in the room alone, just start going some walks, just be bored. Allow your mind spaciousness. But outside of that, you know, meditate beforehand, lock in music. You know, I always listen to music. You know, and this is true that the music can sway what you're making because the emotions. Yeah. But you can also use that to your advantage. Yeah, you know, I agree. If I'm making something more striking and violent, I can listen to music that matches that energy.
And I think if you're used to it, like for example, for me, like listen to a lot of more intense music, and I'm not even making something that's intense sometimes.
Yeah,
but I'm just used to it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I grew up,
me in that.
You know, in order to survive high school, having my headphones in all day.
Yeah,
you know, like
headphones in
being on the bus, like that. I think I don't want to speak for a generation, but like you, me, Austin.
Yeah,
I know we went through that. Like, bro,
100%.
I just went through life with music, and I still do. I'm a little spiritual hiatus for a bit where I was like, no music, no influence, no rap, no ego.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm coming back to it all and integrating.
I'm sure it helped too.
I'm sure it was a good way to definitely necessary. Definitely necessary. But I do think music is very important.
One of the most important questions out of this whole thing, at least for me, because I relate to this question a lot, looking back to my younger self, is what advice would you give to aspiring artists looking to pursue a career?
I would say the first thing is don't wait to take action. You don't need the thing to make the thing. You know, I used to, when I was younger, I would put an Amazon cart together, and I would be like, once I have these things, I'll make what I've been wanting to make. Yeah. You know, but it's like, bro, you can get any kind of program to make music on your phone. You know, you can start with that.
Yes, didn't Steve Lacy, that's how he got his first, one of the most popular songs. I think he made it on his phone.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I think he made it on BandLab.
Damn, I didn't even know that.
Or GarageBand or some shit.
Yeah, probably like GarageBand.
I'll show you a little bit of the process.
Lacy records all of his music on his phone. He's used lots of apps before, but GarageBand is his favorite.
And I started off with a simple drum loop. The guitar.
But yeah, I mean, if you just got pens and a paper and you want to draw shit, like that's how I started. That's how I've been drawing. Somehow I ended up here, you know, but like, don't wait. This was another thing. I would think like when I'm good enough, I'll execute that idea. You know, I've got this crazy idea, but I'm not good enough.
Happens so much. I know exactly what you mean.
It's like make the idea so that you can just keep moving. It's just about getting in that motion. You know, getting in the habit of acting on a creative impulse.
It is the momentum.
Yeah, momentum. I think that's the word I was looking for. Momentum. Other than that, I would say really, you know, when you're making something or just looking at anything you're consuming, like really try to objectively look at and think like, who am I making this for? What am I making this for? Am I making this for myself? Am I making this to impress my teacher? Am I making this so that it looks good on an Instagram post? You know, like really take a second and be like, am I judging this? Am I striving for perfection? What is perfection to me? Does perfection just exist based on what other people have said to me? You know, it's like there's no box until you make that for yourself. Yeah. And thinking one thing is better than the other. And that, you know, in my experience can really hinder the work and the creativity. So to kind of sum that up, I would just say, don't be so judgmental towards your work and really be intentional.
Man, that be okay with producing shit. Yes. Be okay with producing shit.
We're gonna produce a lot of shit.
Yes.
But you have to make that shit to be able to be like, ooh, I kind of like that from this. Ooh, that's kind of striking. And you can't have the expectation that it's all gonna look good, you know? Right. You can't go into that and be like, fuck, I'm waiting to make shit and it looks like shit. That's what I did like a week ago. And then I was like, damn, I told myself this was an experimental piece. Why am I hung up that it's not pretty? Yeah. Like what? That wasn't even the point.
And looking back, like think about all the times as this, process has been developing that that has limited your potential on the piece. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like thinking, oh man, this has to look this way or this perfect or this realistic. And then you do it that way. And I'm like, man, that's not really what I was looking for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I was doing that for a while, like first 2 years of being here.
Now for the last question, just as important as the last, can you tell me about any upcoming projects or exhibitions that you're excited about? You want to plug anything in your Instagram, anything?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna tell you how it is. I'm a shout out. Okay. I got Blue Duns with Art
Who done
That's
with
right.
art?
It used to be Art by Blue, but I thought it was corny for the longest time, so I had to change that shit. But
Like what the fuck? Like when I was playing games and shit
Yeah.
online, it was like Damien Spades. Like I was like making a YouTube channel.
yeah, mine was it was like the Joker Spades or some shit like that. It was, I believe, not this weekend, but the following. Fine Arts is hosting a show. It's like personal items. I honestly don't remember the name of it, but I should have work in there.
Okay.
So be on the lookout for that. And then I have a piece in a show at the New York Academy of Arts.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
Flex.
No. I got lucky. but that's in November 8th. So if anybody's interested, there should be like a virtual experience for that. Or if you're in New York, pop out.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to fly there, planning to fly there for the day if I can get my classes excused and shit. But yeah.
Awesome. Hey, a lot of context that we needed to know about this, especially about you. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Appreciate that, bro.
Appreciate
Damn,
it.
Nah, dab me up, bro.
Feels like the life I need's a little distant, yeah. Feels like the life I need, yeah. Feels like